Hello and welcome everyone. This is our last session in track B, but I do want to make a quick announcement. We do have a last minute edition also in track A. So DMG glass blowing is going to be talking about how glass blowing works and what they do with glass blowing. So if any of you are interested and wanted to learn about that, just click on anywhere in the track A and that will take you to their session as well. But I am incredibly excited about our session today. Uh, Chris Eminello is going to be talking about, you see all these different flags and they're going to be talking about how do you decode these maritime signals. So Chris, I am super excited and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. And we'll get started. Yeah. So welcome everybody. My name is Chris Simonello. I'm with the U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System. And today we're going to be talking to you about ocean observations and how these are applied to a lot of different applications about weather and ocean water quality and things like that. And we're going to also learn about communicating information on the high seas, because international waters, people don't always speak the same language. The U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System has 11 regions. My name is Chris, and I'm with the Gulf of Mexico region, and I'm going to introduce you to two of my colleagues, and they're going to help me teach you some information about the observing system today.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Wakely. I work with SOCORA, which is the Southeast Coastal Ocean Observing System.
Hi, my name is Grant Craig, and I'm with the Gulf of Mexico Coastal Ocean Observing System.
And we're going to talk about three different things today. Why universal communication on the high seas is important, how the U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System is supporting safe and efficient maritime operations, and also the International Code of Signals. Before we get started, I'm going to show you a very short video clip. It's only about 36 seconds, and it's kind of fun. So pay attention to get an idea of why the International Code of Signals might be important. So you kind of get an example that communicating is really important and understanding what somebody is saying, especially on the high seas. I'm going to hand it over to Abby, and she's going to talk to you about some of the technologies that we use to monitor the ocean conditions.
Hey guys, it's Abby again. So what you see on a picture or on the photo on the slide here is what is called a coastal ocean observing system. It's something that we mentioned before. And I work with SOCORA, one of 11, trying to observe the ocean. So what is a coastal ocean observing system? It's a combination of hardware to humans collecting data to make forecasts that impact our lives. So if a hurricane comes through, this data is collected by these instruments here and helps us decide if we need to retreat or we need to stay put. And this is another example of the technology that we collect. This is a buoy and it has all these sensors on it. And there's actually a mini one here over here to my left. And they go in the water and they collect data that feeds into forecast. Raise your hand if you've been on a boat. I know I can't see you guys, but if you go out on the water, you guys need to know if it's safe. Are the waves too high? Because if the waves are too high, your boat's going to topple over. What's the water temperature? Maybe the temperature affects the ideal location of where you want to catch fish. And so all this data is collected through buoys and different technology. Chris is going to talk about gliders. And that information goes into these forecasts that we rely on to make smart decisions.
I'm back. So as Abby said, buoys are just one platform that we put sensors on to observe the ocean. Gliders, drogues are a couple different platforms. And the kind of information that you get depends on the sensors that you put on these floating platforms. GCOOS has a platform called Gandalf, for those of you who are fans of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The website provides a tracking tool for all of the pilots that are flying these gliders, and they can go there, track where their gliders are, and get the data and information about what those sensors on those gliders are picking up. And if you're in your classroom, you can use that URL on the bottom and access these data. They're open to everybody. And if you follow the tracks in yellow, you'll see the missions that are currently going on right now. And the blue dots are where all of those floating drogues are. They're collecting things like temperature, salinity. All of those data get fed into numerical models that are then used to make the forecasts. And this is one example of a profile in 3D that's showing you temperature. And on the right side, you see a color bar. The lighter the color yellow, the warmer the water. So you can see right now, the water at the surface is warmer and it gets colder as you go down. That's really important because the depth that the water remains warm is really instrumental in helping forecasters decide how intense a hurricane might be, how much surge might be pushed up onto the land depending on the intensity. And so that ocean heat content that's measured with that heat is very critical for these forecasts. And again, these are just two examples, the buoys and the gliders. There's a lot of different ways that people monitor the oceans, either through satellites, through a lot of other different types of sensors. I'm going to hand it off now to Grant, who's going to talk to you about what the International Code of Signals is, and then give you some activities that you can play along with as we go.
Okay, hi everyone. So that is just so cool that there's all these buoys and gliders and satellites collecting real-time data that ships and people on the water can tune into as it's happening and figure out the weather and currents and things they might need to know while they're navigating the high seas. In addition to that, they also need to be able to communicate with other ships that they might come across on the high seas. And for that, they use the International Code of Signals. It's a worldwide system of signals and codes used by ships and vessels to communicate important messages regarding safety and navigation. All right, this code of signals is made up of the letters A through Z and the numbers 1 through 10. So no matter what country you hail from or what language you speak or how you write your own alphabet, the International Code of Signals is A through Z and 1 through 10. All right, so here's some of the flags used to represent the Code of Signals. This Code of Signals was developed in the 1850s. It's been kind of revised as things change over the years with technology and ship traffic. And the current International Code of Signals that we use today was revised in the 60s. And it really focuses on safety of navigation and people as the most important things that they have to communicate with one another. These signals and messages can be communicated a bunch of different ways. They can be communicated visually with flags, so you kind of see which flags are up and you know what they're trying to tell you. Over the radio, where they use the letters. Over telegraph, which is kind of Morse code tapping. And then also by sound, horns, where you can also communicate Morse code with sound. Each letter of the International Code of Signals alphabet also has a name and a flag to represent that signal. And if you were to communicate over the radio, say, you wouldn't say A, D, E to represent different messages. You would use a word to represent the letter so that there's no confusion between that. Wait, did he say V or did he say B? All right, so here's an example at the bottom for C. Right next to it, you see the flag that represents C, and they use the word Charlie. So I wouldn't say C, I would say Charlie. And then the last image on the bottom there are the lines and the dashes and dots that is the Morse code representation of the letter C. Okay, so how is this useful? Again, clear and precise communication is essential to being safe on the high seas and ships moving in and out of ports as well. Safe navigation protects people. Say somebody falls overboard, you need to communicate that with other ships perhaps and ask help. It protects the environment. You know, if ships run aground or crash into each other with toxic contaminants aboard, that can, oil spills and such, that could really have a negative impact on the environment. And cargo can be, the ships can be carrying millions of dollars worth of cargo, and we want to get it safely from port to port. All right, so for example, Tampa Bay, the port of Tampa Bay is about, the ship channel that leads to the port of Tampa Bay is about 45 miles long. And at its widest point, it's about 600 feet wide. That's not that wide to have to manage large ships possibly passing each other and coming in and out of the port of Tampa Bay. If they get out of that ship's channel, they're going to quickly run aground, and we can run into some of the safety issues that we mentioned earlier. If you look at the picture of all these densely packed boats and ships in this picture, imagine one of them was experiencing engine failure and they were basically not able to move or at the mercy of the currents, just adrift. That's a big problem, especially in a high traffic area like this. And if, say, they were hailing from the Philippines and didn't speak English or German or another language that some of the other ship captains might speak, what they would do is use the International Code of Signals, and they might hoist these 4 flags up on their flagpole or communicate them over radio or those other methods we talked about. Foxtrot, Delta, Kilo, and Victor, F, D, K, and V. And what they represent, so each one of these letters also has a message that it stands for. So Foxtrot, if I were to communicate that, what that means is I'm disabled. If I were to say Foxtrot, Foxtrot, my ship is disabled. The next I would communicate is Delta, and that means keep clear. The next one they communicate is Kilo, and that means they would like to communicate. And also, in the last flag you see there is Victor, that they require assistance. Because that could be a kind of a chain of messages that they could throw out there and hopefully get some help for their situation. All right. Okay, so what are we going to do? I have a quick activity where you're going to see some flags, and I'm going to ask you to kind of look them up and figure out which letter corresponds to which flag and see if you can unscramble the word. All right, and then a little later, Abby's going to talk about creating a class banner. In the teacher materials that were supplied in the link with this, your teacher has all of the instructions and templates for these as well, whether you do them now or at another time. All right, so let's practice a little bit of decoding the International Code of Signals. So on the right side of your screen, you see 5 flags. All right, we're going to kind of look them up one at a time, starting with the top row and going over and then to the middle row and then to the bottom. So that top left flag, the red and white one, go ahead and look on the side and try and figure out which letter corresponds to that flag. Give me just a second, and you probably got it by now. It is H. All right, and now look at the next one, just next to H there, and figure out that one. Okay, and probably got it by now, it's R. And after that, on the middle row with the blue square in the middle, and right under R, yep, that's S. And then we've seen this other flag before as we were talking about the ship in distress, that is K, Kilo. And then on the bottom, we have, that's right, the first letter of the alphabet, A. Okay, I'll give you a second to unscramble those. And you might recognize that A flag too, if anybody is familiar with diving and how you communicate to other boats that you have divers in the water. In the United States, the dive flag is the red flag with the white diagonal line that we're familiar with. But you get out of US waters and people aren't gonna know what that means. The international dive flag around the world that everybody understands is the alpha flag, that A flag right there. All right, so hopefully by now you've unscrambled our word, and the word is shark. All right, so just a little bit of activity to get you familiar with some of the different flags and decoding. I'm going to pass it off to Abby now, and she will guide you through our next activity.
Hey y'all, it is Abby. I'm back again. So next up, we're gonna make a class banner. And as Grant said, your teachers has the packets, or you guys can do this at home too. So your whole class is going to select a saying for the class banner, and it should be the same number or letters as the number of students. So it could be a school mascot, it could say Go Science 2020, or it could be your favorite Harry Potter house. Mine's personally Slytherin. So you guys can choose that, and you'll choose it with the whole class. And then you'll sign a letter to each student. So let's say you're doing Slytherin, somebody would get S, somebody would get L, and they would color it. And then you got to color the letter and color the whole flag. We provided 6x6 templates for you guys. So make sure that the whole thing is colored in. We want it to be big. If you're on a boat and you're 100 feet away, if we get something this tiny, we can't see it. So make it as big as the whole piece of paper. And then once you're done, you guys will string the banner in the saying, and then you'll hang it in the classroom. And we have a little perk. The first 3 teachers to send us a photo of your guys' banner strung together in the classroom, we'll get a little special surprise from GCUS and Sakura, and we'll bring it to you guys. We'll mail it to you guys. Sorry about that. And if you're doing this at home, why don't you spell out your name or do something smaller? And you'll need a red crayon, a blue crayon, a yellow crayon, and a black crayon. And this is an example. One of our students, or one of our classes last year that were able to meet in person, I think they did something Harry Potter themed. I'm not quite sure. And this is Holy Family School. So I think you guys are watching. Hey, nice to see you guys again. Welcome. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of go back to here so you guys can get a look at the different letters. And as you guys are coming up with your class saying, you're coloring your banner, or you're doing this at home and gathering the supplies, be sure to type questions in the chat box. We're here to answer any questions that you guys have. And Chris, you want to come back?
Welcome back. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Grant. Hopefully now you're all experts in communication. You can all become harbor pilots, a very high-paid job. It's a great STEM career if you're thinking about it. We are going to just skip over to here for 1 second, just so that you know, for your teachers, we have contact information at the end of our presentation. I'm going to go back to the flag so that those who are working on the banners can continue working on them and have a template for the guide while we're asking and answering questions. So David, thank you for such great technical support. And if there are any questions for us, we are very happy to take them now.
Well, thank you very much for such a wonderful and engaging presentation. So a couple questions are coming in. Just let me make a quick announcement in that we're getting some really good questions in, and we're going to do our best to try to get to all of them. Don't get discouraged if we don't get to yours. Like I've been saying before, we have over 3,300 students participating at some point. So if we don't get to it, we're keeping track of all the different questions, and we're going to try to get them out and get those answers to you. So one of the questions that's coming in is, I think there's a little bit of confusion with the flags, because we have like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and then they have different meanings underneath them. But then we're doing like spelling out the word shark. So are the flags used as a message per each flag, or do they use the flags to spell out words?
That's an excellent question. And I can understand why it's confusing. Typically at sea, on the high seas, they are used for their messaging. So the way you would use Morse code, the way you would use your radio, these are messages. I'm grounded. I have no communication. I am turning astern. That's typically how they're used. More for the recreational boater, they tend to be used as letters for writing messages and for sayings and things.
Okay. So if the radio is broken, this is one way they could send out messages. Are there
Absolutely.
other ways that boaters could send out messages if their radio is broken?
The Morse code, the horns, light signals are some different ways in over history that people have used different techniques.
Okay. So you talked about the buoys in the beginning. How much do one of those things cost?
That's a great question. So there's various ones. I'm going to answer what I know that we've spent on some of them, and I'm going to let Abby speak on some of the ones that Sakura has used. The buoys themselves are just the mechanism in the platform, and those can be on the order of, $20,000, $10,000. But it's all of the instruments, and it depends what you pack it with. So there's underwater acoustic Doppler current profilers. There's anemometers to measure wind speed. There's radiometers. There's barometers, there's temperatures, thermometers, there's salinity gauges, conductivity gauges. All of those can be on the order of, hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars, such that by the time you get to a full buoy, you can be looking at over $100,000 for one unit. Abby, do you want to add anything to?
No, Chris, I think you got it right. It's all dependent on the sensors. So within Sakura, we kind of think $60,000 per buoy, but as Chris said, it depends on what you're measuring. If you're looking at water quality, you're going to need different sensors than if you're looking at something in atmospheric, like you'll need an anemometer to look at wind speed. So it kind of just all depends. And then there's that operation and maintenance costs. So there's people who have these STEM jobs that go on boats and actually fix the sensors. So let's say an otter went out, there's no more wind speed, they'll go on a boat and they'll fix it. So we have to have funding to pay for that. So it's not cheap. but we actually pull a lot of our resources and work together with folks like GCOOS to collect the data.
And one other quick comment on that is that a lot of the instruments, they don't just serve one purpose. So as Abby said, you might be getting wind data. That could help a lot of different problems. So it might help with your navigation, but it might help with your forecasting for coastal hazards. And it could also help with your public health and safety issues around red tide. So you're really getting a lot of bang for the buck for that one sensor.
Okay. So how did the names get decided for each of the flags? Like, why is A Alpha, B Bravo? How did we decide the names?
You know what, Drew?
I just know it's the same as the. I'm not 100% sure. That is an excellent question. I believe this is also the same names used by the military as they're communicating letters across the radio as well. But I'm not 100% sure of the origin. Great question.
Okay, so the next one's kind of a follow-up similar to it. I mean, how do they choose, like, some of them have like the triangle cut out, some of them are different shapes or different colors, different designs. How did they come up with all the different colors and designs for the flags themselves?
Very again, my guess would be they try. There's 4 colors, so they didn't overcomplicate it with a lot of different colors. Only the numbers have, well, with the exception of Alpha, only the numbers have that triangular shape to their flag. They want the flags to be just very distinctive from one another, so that one flag really doesn't look like any of the others, so that it can't be confused when they're trying to get those messages across.
Okay. What are the questions?
If you'll notice, the letters are all squares and rectangles pretty much, and the numbers and the repeater flags. So there's different symbols. So for example, if you have a word with multiple of the same letter, there's certain flags that you use that are rectangular that tell you this letter is repeating multiple times. And so it might be embedded in the history of the flags of what was possible to produce at the time, because this is a very old system.
Okay, interesting. So, question here, are sharks a threat to the buoys? Do their fins or mouths damage them? Or maybe we can expand it to any animals. Can that be a danger to buoys?
So that's a great question. A lot of the issues that we have with the buoys and the sensors on the buoys, it's called biofouling. That's when living marine organisms can damage. Like a lot of times we'll have remoras attach themselves to the gliders and it affects the buoyancy. So something that should be flying like this has a fish attached to its fin and it starts going sideways. And so you can usually tell when something's attached to it. As far as the buoys, they get a lot of algae on the sensor. So especially if you have optical sensors, you have to watch out for them, like putting like a green film or a yellow film, and then they don't quite work the way they're supposed to. So you have to go out and maintain them, as Abby was saying. They need servicing on a regular basis.
Okay. So, how does a buoy, or what does a buoy use? How does it know if there's a hurricane coming?
The buoy does not know, but fortunately the STEM professional who's operating the sensors on the buoy knows. So they have right now hurricane hardened systems that are specifically made to withstand the force of hurricane winds. Other ones have been picked up and dragged. Other ones have been lost and destroyed. If there are resources, a ship will sometimes go out and pick up in advance of the storm coming. So there's all different levels of. The hardest thing and the newest thing right now is getting information in advance of, during, and after storms, because those data are really valuable in terms of hindcasting and learning what happened during that storm to make better predictions for future storms.
All right. So we have a very keen eye with this next question. What does no message for Romeo mean? Does that mean that that flag doesn't have a message, or?
Yes, that's exactly right. There's no message assigned to that letter, and I don't know why.
Okay, I'm just curious. It's interesting that it would be R, and you would think it would be like Z, one of the last letters. So, who created the international code? I know you said it was like in 1850, but who created it?
Well, it was an assemblage of, I believe it was 8 countries at the time. Japan, Germany, France, England, US. I'm not going to get all of them, but kind of some of the bigger players in high seas navigation at the time. And as that was revised over the years, so they did add some countries that contributed to that international group that comes up with all these messaging signals.
who pays for the buoys?
Abby, you wanna-
That is a great question. It's a lot of shared resources. So Socorro is funded, as Chris said, the Integrated Ocean Observing System. And we're funded through NOAA. And if you guys ever heard of NOAA National Weather Service, they're the ones that provide your forecast data. So we're part of a big group, and we go to Congress. So we'll go to the Hill and talk to political officials and try to get money for these buoys. And we also do, we work with states like FWRI, FWC to get these. Really, it's all pooled resources. And that's one of our jobs within Socorro, is to get money for this because it's so important for marine safety, as Grant has mentioned.
And we also get, in addition to the federal funding, there's a lot of like the coastal conservation associations, fishing groups, people who are interested in knowing a particular data set for a particular area will pony up money and contribute it so that they can answer the questions that are of interest to them too. You'd be amazed, a lot of the fishing communities fund a lot of those sorts of data sets. Surfrider Foundation, the surfers, the divers, they benefit from this as well. So they're willing to pony up some funds.
Okay, I actually got one more question before we go. It just came in, so they just got it in under the wire. Were the buoys helpful during Hurricane Irma?
Absolutely, yes. Both Socorro and GCUS have partnered together. They actually did a glider picket line where we sent out a whole bunch of gliders. It was never done before. And the information that they got collectively from a lot of different institutions helped to refine that forecast into one of the better ones that they've ever been able to produce. And I'm sorry about my mask.
Chris, thank you so very much. You and your colleagues are absolutely wonderful presentation. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and as I'm sure many of the people watching did. Thank you again for all of willing to contribute and participate and helping to make the festival a success. So thank you very much.
To all of you, and to Jamerson and Sanderlin and all of our schools out there. We hope to see you in person next year. We miss you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And for all of our participants, thank you so much for helping to make the Science Festival virtual this year such a huge success. We had 3,300 students register for it. We're just amazed by that number. And so thank you. And we look forward to hopefully next year being live again. So enjoy the rest of your experiences. Do not forget that tomorrow is still our Science Festival virtual, so you can click on any of the videos. There's a ton of resources. If you said, oh, wow, this session was really awesome, you got to watch it, tell your friends about it because the sessions will be uploaded tomorrow and you can watch all of these sessions again with your friends. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to having you watch the videos tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dave.